boys and girls, welcome back to another episode of the Alex Albon Superfan Show. I have a huge smile on my face because Alex has had another good weekend. Now, I missed the Canadian Grand Prix where he finished P7, but there it was mostly pit strategy and just defending with straight line speed that really saw him finish well, whereas at the British Grand Prix this weekend, I think he showed a little bit more of his driving ability. So started on Friday, obviously, with FP1 and FP2, where he finished quite well, finishing in the top 3 in both sessions. Logan also finishing P5 in FP2. That is my cat. Say hello to Lucy. And then Saturday morning in FP3, Alex managing to finish P2 and Logan P7. Granted, it was shortened by rain and not everybody had set qualifying laps in FP3, but still really good pace, and everybody was surprised. Even Alex was surprised. He stated afterwards saying he wasn't really quite sure where the pace was coming from. The team weren't really quite sure where the pace was coming from, but the fact that they were able to find that pace is a really good sign for them. So if they can look into the data and figure out what they did right this weekend, it should definitely help them out. So going into qualifying, it was looking up for them, but unfortunately in Q1, I think Alex might have had a lap time deleted and maybe Logan as well. So they were in the drop zone with the 3 minutes left to go when the Haas stopped on track. So after that, they managed to get to the front of the pit lane exit right behind Sergio Perez, who was also trying to get into Q2. Now, I think he was in like the top 15 at that point, but he was only like P12 or something like that. So he really needed to set a really good lap time. Perez set a decent lap time, and then Alex beat him. Logan beat him, which was unfortunate. They weren't sitting there as long as Perez was at the end of the pit lane, but Checo just couldn't turn on the tires, I suppose, and ended up being dropped. I think he finished P16, so just barely missing out by like 6 thousandths of a second or something like that. But the rain towards the end of Q1 didn't help. If you look at the onboards of Alex's qualifying runs going into I can't remember that last corner. Not Cops, going into, I'll have to look that up. Going into Stowe, how did I forget Stowe? If you see, if you look at the onboards of him on the exit of Stowe, the rear end was just really, really fidgety, and the car just did not want to settle down. But fortunately for them, when the race was, where the Q1 was red flagged, the rain had stopped and it had dried up a bit, which allowed both Williams to qualify quite well. So I think whatever working window they're in to make the car perform well, it's a very, very narrow window. And if the weather is not right, track temperature is not right, I think it'll be very difficult for them to find that pace again. But fortunately for them, in those last 3 minutes, they were able to find a good working window and made it into Q2. And Logan ended up getting dropped in Q2, but he still had a pretty good performance. I think still really good performance in qualifying for Logan. Alex made it into Q3, where he finished P8, beating Gasly and Alonso, of all people. That was really surprising. So he qualified P8, and probably not as high as everybody was expecting him to qualify, considering the pace he had in the practice sessions, but I think P8 was still quite well. So going into the race, I had a lot of hope that he would be able to finish maybe in the back half of the points. But then we get to race start. Did not go well for Alex. He got mugged right off the line. Alonso got out in front of him. Gasly ended up out in front of him, and he was in P10. Now, he did have a little fight with Hamilton on lap 1 in sectors 1 and sectors 2, because I'm not sure if Hamilton got contact with somebody, but he went off going into turn 4. And then when he came back on track, he and Alex had a little bit of a fight, but Hamilton ended up in front, and then eventually getting in front of Gasly and Alonso as well. So Alex was sitting there P10 for the majority of the first half of the race. Early on, it looked like Stroll was able to stay within DRS, and it was a little bit afraid that he was going to overtake Alex. Alex sitting in P10 final points position. And Alex wasn't that far off of Gasly and Alonso either, actually being able to stay within 2 seconds for a good chunk of the first half of that race. But then once the tires started to go and Perez ultimately overtook Alex, dropping him to P11, the tires started to go a little bit. He started dropping back. But even after Perez overtook Alex, Perez, for one, wasn't able to catch up to Gasly and Alonso. He was still sitting about 2 seconds back. And then Alex was sitting about 2 seconds back in P11. And then by then I thought maybe Alex wasn't going to score any points that day just because he was in P11. Everybody else in front, Perez was probably going to move up, and he had already spent half of the race sitting behind Gasly and not able to close up that gap. And in fact, he was actually falling further back. Then I think Gasly pits, moving Alex up to P10. A couple other guys pit, guys like Sainz and Russell and Leclerc. And I'm not sure if Russell and Sainz came out behind Alex, but they were both able to jump him eventually. I'm not quite sure now. I'm forgetting what it was. But yeah, Alex was sitting there. No. I'm sorry. They were still behind Alex until the red flag, well, not the red flag, what am I talking about? The safety car came out, VSC, due to one of the Haas's catching fire down the Hangar Straight, I believe. I think it was the Hangar Straight that it caught fire. So the VSC comes out. Alex gets a shortened pit stop. I think pit stops are generally about 22 seconds at Silverstone in real life. And he got a quick 9-second pit stop instead and came out in P9 behind Sainz and Perez, because I think Alonso had jumped Sainz with the shortened VSC stop. So he was sitting in P9 on soft tires, and he had Leclerc behind him on mediums, and he had Sainz 2 positions ahead on the hard tires, and he had Alonso ahead of him on softs as well. And man, that move that he put on Sainz, well, if you didn't see it, obviously Perez overtakes Sainz in the final couple corners, and coming out of the final corner down the start-finish straight, Alex, he must have been using his battery or something, just jumped on it and overtook Sainz going into turn 1. So yeah, he overtakes Sainz into turn 1, and then Sainz just starts tumbling back. He loses another position to Leclerc, and then Gasly and Stroll were fighting with him as well. I think Gasly and Sainz might have swapped positions once or twice before Gasly ultimately got taken out by Stroll. Got a 5-second penalty for that. Destroyed Gasly's front suspension, I believe, or one of the struts, or the rods, I should say, in the front of Gasly's car. So Alex was able to get out in front of Sainz and sat there in P9, and I think he had a chance to overtake Alonso, because Alonso did not look super quick. The Aston Martin did not look super quick whatsoever. Gasly was able to sit right behind Alonso for pretty much the entire half of the race in DRS. And for whatever reason, I'm not sure what it was, Alonso just could not pull away from Alex. He dropped DRS to, I believe it was Perez in front, and just could not keep up with Perez, and so he dropped back into the clutches of Alex's DRS, and Alex was able to sit there and for the last maybe 10 laps or so of the race. But because Leclerc was right behind Alex and pushing as well, almost getting by Alex on a couple occasions, Alex had to use a lot of his battery to stay out in front of Leclerc. So by the time the last 2 laps came around, Alex just did not have enough battery to make a push on Alonso. Now after the race, he said because of the lack of hard braking zones at Silverstone, obviously the battery is recharged through the brakes, with very few hard braking zones, it's really difficult to charge your battery at Silverstone, and so he just did not have anything left to fight with. But he still finished P8 with 4 points. I believe it's 4 points for P8. Moved himself up ahead of Hulkenberg, I believe, in the points, the driver standings, and helped Williams move up to, I think they're 7th in the Constructors' Championship. They're tied with Haas, but I think because for one reason or another, they are currently ranked above Haas at this point, even though they have the same amount of points. So it was a really good race from Alex, and actually a really strong race from Logan as well. He showed quite a bit of improvement. He wasn't too far off of Alex, not like he generally is in most races, where he is like 40 seconds behind Alex. He was actually quite close, and it sounded like he was quite happy with his performance as well. So really good weekend overall for both drivers in the Williams team and for their 800th Grand Prix. I don't know, technically I don't think it's their 800th Grand Prix under the name Williams, but because Frank Williams had another team before, I don't know how they're counting the Grand Prix, but it was their 800th Grand Prix. So really good performance in a home Grand Prix as well. And I just want to say good job to Lando Norris and Lewis Hamilton, but because this is the Alex Albon Superfan Show, I don't want to spend too much time on that. But it was a very, very solid drive. Very good drive. Not solid. It was an excellent drive from both the McLaren drivers. Piastri kind of lost out due to the safety car coming out because I think he was going to undercut Norris had that safety car not come out, so that would have been interesting to see. But Hamilton moved up all the way to P3, finished on the podium. Verstappen, of course, just ran away with it, even though early on Norris was able to take the lead. But I think it was a really, really good Grand Prix. Probably one of the better Grand Prix because of fights up and down the grid. So, yeah, that's about it for us. Another good race for Alex. I think this Williams team, they're not going to do quite well at Hungary. It's a very high downforce track. This car is not built for high downforce tracks. But for the first time in a long time, the Belgian Grand Prix will be held before the summer break. So they should be able to end the first half of the season with a very good race. Hopefully they can score some more points if he can reproduce his performance from last year's Belgian Grand Prix. He should be able to finish in the points, considering the car looks to be a lot better in relation to the other cars on track this year than they were last year. So it should be another good race for them. But yeah, I think Hungary will probably be a difficult one to watch. I don't know how well they'll do. I don't know. Maybe they'll unlock something. Like I said earlier, they're not quite sure where they got the pace from this weekend, so maybe it'll happen again at Hungary and they can get 2 decent races in before the summer break. But that is it for this episode of the Alex Albon Superfan Show, guys. Very good last few race weekends. I can't remember exactly where he finished at Austria, but he didn't perform terrible at Austria either, I don't believe. So 2 of the last 3 races he has scored points, which is looking good for the Williams team, and Logan is looking to like he's starting to find some pace and some consistency in that car as well. So here's hoping that they both can continue to do well into the season. Thank you guys for watching. If you think I've earned it, feel free to leave a like, comment, or subscribe. Stay tuned for more. Remember to eat bok choy, and I'll see you in the next one. If you guys want to share this with Alex Albon on Twitter, feel free to go ahead. I need a new best friend. All right, I'll see you guys.